Hey everyone, welcome to day 20. So today was like a lot of days in the last week, not terribly eventful from the outside standpoint. Um, can't say I got a whole lot done. Um, didn't have a whole lot of experiences. Did get out for a little bit, had a good meal, enjoyed watching some of the fights. Um, but there was one thing that kind of struck me. Um, so I was watching the UFC fights that were on tonight. And I've always been a fan of boxing, wrestling, um, and mixed martial arts, contests of that nature, just because, fighting is just one of those things that is probably the purest contest there is. There's no advantage to different shoes. There's no advantage to different equipment or jerseys or, it's just you. It's just what you bring to the table, how well you read the other person, and how well you execute on, your strategy, your game plan. Um, it's really competition in its rawest form. And I was watching the main fight tonight. For those of you who aren't fight fans, you probably won't know who was involved, but if you watched, you know the fight between John Jones and Daniel Cormier. And it was interesting. And I'll give you a little backstory for this just to kind of make it resonate with you. So, John Jones was the previous champion in his division. And he had held the title, he was undefeated until he happened to get caught with drugs. And his last fight prior to this one, he was disqualified because they drug tested him before the fight. He didn't pass the drug test. They disqualified him, and then he didn't fight again for several years. He even did some time in jail as a result of drugs. He came out of jail. To our knowledge, he's been clean, and this was his first fight back. But because he was the undefeated champion before all of that went down, he immediately got an opportunity to fight the current champion, who is Daniel Cormier. And Daniel Cormier's only loss in his professional career was to John Jones. So that stung. And the fact that he was champion, but he never got it by beating the champion, really stung. You could tell that it hurt him. There was a vendetta. There was a vengeance. There was a bitterness to it, and he was very much, very much into using this fight to redeem himself, using this fight to show that not only was he the champion, but he was a legitimate champion, better than everyone else in his weight class. And even when they were doing the pre-fight hype, it was very much, I am the champ. You could tell he felt inadequate or incomplete. And so this fight was meant to validate him. And this was going to show that he was the true champion, better than everyone else. And for those who have never watched UFC fighting, the fights are fairly quick. It was a championship bout, so it was 5 rounds, 5 minutes each. And you could tell early on that there was a very different approach to the fight between the champion and the challenger. The champion clearly had a chip on his shoulder, and different from how he would normally fight his fights. He was trash talking, he was brash, he was more aggressive and less strategic, and it showed early on. He took the fight to the challenger early on, and he wanted that knockout. He wanted that submission, whatever. He wanted that win badly. And it showed. It's a good fight through the first 2 rounds, and then suddenly the champ just made a mistake. He made a mistake. He dipped down at the wrong time. I don't know whether that was part of his strategy or he just got distracted, but he dipped down at the wrong time and he caught a shot basically right at the side of his head that completely disoriented him. Threw him completely, entirely off his game, mostly defenseless. And you could tell that it disrupted him because it shook him entirely. And his immediate response was, I've got to get away. I've got to get away. I've got to get away. And so he then proceeds to run around the octagon away from the competitor, or the challenger. And the challenger realized his opportunity. He saw it. He saw it clearly. And so he's pursuing the champion as he's staggering, as he's disoriented. And he's punching him. At one point he tripped him, and then got him to the ground and finished him off. And it was a very quick finish. Pretty much from that kick forward was a very quick time period, maybe 20 to 25 seconds. And it was over. It was over. The referee had to break it up. It was clear that the champion was in no condition to go forward. So the fight was over. And so John Jones, who was the previous champion and undefeated, regained his title. And Daniel Cormier, the champion who had only ever lost to John Jones, lost to him again. And you could tell that the emotion of it was more than just losing a fight, because most fighters had lost a fight before. It was something far deeper. It was like the demons got a hold of him. His inner demons got a hold of him. And there was an emotional outpouring. At one point he was fighting and arguing with the refs that broke up the fight, even though he was clearly in no condition to continue, and frankly would have risked seriously damaging his long-term health had the fight continued. And by the end of it, he wouldn't stand with the referee when they announced the winner. He was bawling. I mean, just floods of tears coming out of his eyes as we do the post interviews. And it was so interesting to see the contrast between these two. Both of them phenomenal fighters. Both of them phenomenal competitors. But both of them were trying to do a story of redemption in their own way. But their road to redemption, or their path to redemption, was very different paths. For the challenger, now champion, John Jones, his challenge, or his road to redemption, was getting past himself, was getting past his mistakes, was getting past the repercussions of his mistakes, and having been given this opportunity to do what he is great at again, to seize that opportunity and to regain his throne, to regain his power, to regain his title. Whereas for Daniel Cormier, the champion, who's since lost his belt, his road to redemption was trying to exorcise the demons of having lost to him before. And the 2.5 years of being champion, but listening to people tell him that he wasn't the legitimate champion because he had never beaten John Jones. And so his demons were more, or his redemption was the inner demons. It was the voices in his head telling him that he's not good enough, that he's not really the champ, that he's not really the best. And when the realization dawned on him that he had lost, and that the voices that he had been hearing for so long may have been right, there was something that shook him to his core in his reaction. This was not sadness. This was ego broken. It's probably the best way I can think of it. Because he wanted so badly to create a new story for himself, but his new story was so rooted in his old story. His new story was so rooted in the one that got away, the fight that he didn't win. That the loss of this was not simply the loss of a fight or even the loss of a title. You could tell there's some deep shadow work that he's going to have to do, which is fine. But then I likened it back to myself. I said, okay, how am I like these two men? How am I like these two men? And I thought through from the champion's point first, which was, how are my inner demons shaping my road to redemption? How is it that I look at the world and hear those voices that tell me that I'm not me, that I'm not powerful, that I'm not handsome, that I'm not strong, that I'm not smart, that I'm not worthy, that I'm not enough? And it's quite a bit. I've long doubted a lot of things in the world and long doubted a lot of things in myself, which generated fear around a lot of things that I could have but didn't do, may have but wouldn't do. And I still hear those words. I still hear those voices. I still hear that ego to this day. But it's not. I think of it like a bully, but not the kind of bully you think of when you watch, an after-school special. I think of it more as a psychological bully. It's that small voice inside that just keeps talking to you and taunting you and telling you that you're not enough. You'll never be enough. You're not worthy. If it wasn't for luck, you wouldn't have what you have. You're not strong enough. You're not smart enough. You're not good enough. You will be unloved, unliked. People only tolerate you. You'll never be accepted. You will never have what you want because you're not enough. And I think about that voice, and I think about how it's on a constant loop, and how it's always saying the same things, and how somehow it's constantly pulling you down and making you, robbing your joy, robbing your satisfaction. And yeah, I've got those demons too. I think we all do. But then I think about the challenger, now champion's road to redemption. And his road to redemption was more overcoming the mistakes of his past. It was showing that he was more than what he had done wrong. It was showing that trip ups, mishaps, bad choices, bad actions were not the sum total of who he is. That the best of him is still there, and that the worst of him can go away. But then I thought of one last thing, which is we so often think about this phrase, the road to redemption. And that causes us to think of it as a journey. It causes us to think of it as a quest, somewhere we have to go to, somewhere we have to get to. And maybe in the eyes of the public, maybe in the eyes of those that know us, maybe in the eyes of the world, that's true. Maybe that's true. But for myself, in my own life, in my own head, in my own heart, in my own spirit, that's not a journey. That's not a journey. All that is me not listening to that voice. It can exist. It's going to, whether I want it to or not. Every time I've tried to fight it, it got louder. Every time I tried to fight it, it kept going. Fighting it did nothing. But when I just stopped listening to it, when I just go, okay, it's there, but it's not going to call the shots for me. It's not going to paint my picture of me. It's not going to color me into this colorless box, and it's not going to define me. When I did that, my redemption was not a road. It was a space that I'm already in. Now, there's still the external world to deal with, and I'm sure there are parts of redemption that I need to do externally. And I will. I have zero doubt about that. I will. But my redemption in myself happened the second that I allowed that to be a part of my space rather than a part of me. So that's a question I've been asking for a long time, because it's a challenge I've been dealing with for a long time. And I'll say this: the universe may have brought me an answer. I don't know. I'll have to stay in the space long enough to see if it lasts or if it's just for now. But I'll tell you this: having that voice, having those thoughts in my head, but not taking them into my heart, not taking them into my spirit, not believing that's who I am. Oh, I can't begin to tell you how wonderful a feeling that is. Because the bully's gone. The bully is gone. And I don't know who originally said or wrote this quote, but it's one that I really like. And it says, "If there is no enemy within, the enemy outside you can do you no harm." My hope is that you find that for yourselves. Hope you have a great day. God bless.